In my line of work, I get to work with some of the most inspiring and innovative entrepreneurs around the globe, like these guys in Sarvajal, who are working on clean water ATMs in rural India. And this is Sam Dargan. He runs Great Lakes Energy in Kigali, Rwanda, and he works on solar energy systems for rural health clinics out there. And this is Stephanie Blount. She works for the Hangane Project, also in Rwanda, and she's providing nutritious foods for infants and healthcare training for nurses out there. This is Cynthia Koenig's work. She makes transporting water safe and efficient for young girls and women in rural India. And I'm really lucky to be working with people who are so driven and so inspired. And what I find most compelling about them is that they're all working in some of the most impoverished places in the world. And they're addressing some of the toughest social challenges, and by doing so, they're creating jobs, and they're building communities, and they're addressing economic development in these places. And I initially became interested in the international development sector after seeing a presentation by Martin Fisher. He's the founder of Kickstart International, and this is 2001. And in his presentation, he was showing pictures of Kenya. And I don't know, something about the pictures. It was the rural landscape, it was the people that he showed, it was the communities that he showed, but something about it was just so familiar to me, I guess is the right word. And there's actually a lot of parallels between life on tribal lands here in the US and rural life in Africa, rural life in India. But you see so much entrepreneurship, and you see the informal economy kind of thriving in global developing economies, but you really don't see that here in the US on tribal lands. I mean, this is the only place in America where half of the population starts their morning every day in line to get water. And that's if you're lucky and you have a car. If you don't, you kind of use whatever you have at home. Like this family in Kinlichee, Arizona, they use old milk jugs to go collect water from the stream near their homes. And sometimes I feel like this is America's best kept secret, that poverty comparable to what you see in Africa exists in the biggest economic powerhouse in the world. So why is this? I feel like there's been one or two TED Talks about tribal lands, about the extreme poverty that exists there, but nothing that's really transparent about why poverty persists in these areas. So if you look at the Navajo Nation, which I think is a really compelling case, and it's where I'm from, so I'm kind of biased in that sense, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, it's the largest tribal landmass in the country. It spans New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah, and it's a very natural resource-rich land. We have about 180,000 people to join the workforce. Well, median age is 24, so we're still a pretty young population. Modern health care is free for all Navajos through the Indian Health Service. And hospitals and clinics are accessible in all major reservation towns. Public school system is there. And honestly, our government is probably the most powerful of all sovereign nations in the US. So why is our per capita income only $7,000? 3 years ago, the unemployment rate on the reservation spanned 40 to 70%. So if you look at where job creation comes from in the US, 60% of it comes from small business, or net new jobs are created from small business. So if you look at the growth rate of small business on the Navajo Nation, over the past 4 years, it's 4%. That's less than half of what it was in the rest of the US. So here's another way of looking at it. You can look at it by size. So the Navajo Nation is roughly the same size as West Virginia. We're actually a little bit bigger. So we're bigger than a few states in the US. And according to the SBA, there's about 28 million small businesses in the US. And if you divide that by 50, you would expect that each state maybe has 100,000 small businesses. Granted, some states are small and some states are big, but you would even expect some of the smaller states to at least have tens of thousands, if not thousands. So how many small businesses do you think exist on Navajo? Well, according to The Economist in 2008, there was 400 businesses on Navajo. And not just small businesses, businesses in total. And they went on to say that most of these businesses were minuscule, they were tiny. Why are there only 400 businesses here? It's not that people don't have money. We may not have very much money, but we still have some money. In fact, $4 billion is spent off reservation annually in the border towns. But why aren't our people creating more of those businesses for themselves? Why is this kind of the status quo on the reservation, these flea market economy and the underground economy? It's not that we're not entrepreneurial. In fact, more than half of the families on the reservation have at least one family member who's on the side of the road every day hawking goods. It doesn't help, though, that we don't really view ourselves as entrepreneurs. I don't even view myself as an entrepreneur. We don't even have a word in our language for entrepreneur. And I'm going to tell you a story that I hope will exemplify it. And this is my cousin Lorraine. And Lorraine's a very skilled weaver. And there's a market for her craftsmanship, both on and off reservation. So let's say that Lorraine was interested in starting a retail business for weaving on the reservation. So she lives in Black Mesa, which, as you can tell, is pretty rural. And the closest retail outlet is pretty far. So she'll have to get a business site lease. She'll have to certify her business. She'll have to incorporate in the state of Arizona. She'll have to incorporate in Navajo. Let's start with the certification process. So this is straight off of navajobusiness.org. And to be honest, this is manageable. If you're diligent, it's manageable. Her real struggles start when she gets to the business site lease application. So according to this, she has to be screened. She has to write her business plan. She has to present it to her chapter. She has to make sure that the land that she wants to use isn't being used by another family's grazing rights and livestock. She has to have an archaeological survey done. She has to have an environmental assessment. She has to get a signature from the Navajo president. She has to get sign-off from the superintendent of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. She has to pay all the necessary fees. And I skipped most of the steps. So in the 90s, this was a multi-year process. The longest I ever heard it took was about 7 years. This is actually the 2006 onward process. They've culled it down to the 1 year. But that's still 360 days longer than it takes to start a business anywhere else in the United States. But let's say, for the sake of the story, that my cousin makes it through the business site lease process of certification and incorporation. She's ready to start her business and she needs a loan. So she goes to the bank, she has a meeting with the loan officer, and she sits down and he says, let's talk about your assets. Let's start listing them out. And she looks at the piece of paper and realizes she doesn't have anything. Her husband owns the truck. The Navajo Housing Authority owns her home. Even the land that her home is built on is held within a trust for the U.S. government. She has no investments. She has no collateral. I'm sorry, you're not a good candidate for a loan. But again, let's say for the sake of the story that my cousin also overcomes that. Let's say she's able to raise $5,000 from friends and family and she starts her business. There's still a variety of other logistical challenges that are going to keep her business from growing and sustaining. First off, the reservation is so big. Only 18% of our roads are actually paved. There's only 200,000 people that live there, so it's not a huge local market. She'll have to build an off-reservation market as well. And in order to do that, she may need something like a telephone. But according to the FCC, only 40% of the reservation has phone service. So then you say, well, she can just use her mobile phone, because that's what everybody does these days. Who still has a landline? And 98% of the US is blanketed in 3G service, except on the reservation. We only have 50%. It's not 3G, it's a shitty edge network. So then you can say, well, she can use Etsy, or she can build her business online. She could, use the internet. Because again, 95% of households in the US have access to broadband in their homes, except on the reservation. In fact, in all tribal lands across the US, less than 10% have access to broadband in their homes. So this is pretty common. People driving 50 miles to get to their local chapter house just so that they can get on Wi-Fi and check their email for the day or for the week. So this is why the next time you're going to the Grand Canyon or to Monument Valley, this is the type of economy you see on the res. It's a flea market economy. It's an informal economy. That's why you see that guy outside of Window Rock who will take your car battery off your hands for $6, or the woman in Cameron who will make you a fantastic $3.50 lunch out of her mobile home on your way to the Grand Canyon. The thing that frustrates me the most about this, though, is that there's no shortage of business opportunities on the reservation. I mean, most of our roads aren't paved, 50% of our homes don't have running water, 20% don't have electricity, most of them don't have telephone service, we still don't have household waste management infrastructure. And the perplexing things to me is that I work with some of the most creative and innovative entrepreneurs, and they're tackling some of these challenges in places that are very similar to the reservation. And the innovations that they're creating are tackling the same social challenges we have on the reds. Things like just clean water, or affordable electricity, or financial inclusion innovation. And couldn't some of those models, couldn't some of those ideas and innovations work here on the reservation? So this is an idea that I've been thinking about for a while, for years, through catapults and just through my own personal interests. And this summer, we started assembling a rock star team on Navajo to help us think through some of these issues. And I was just with them 2 days ago, and if I could have, I would have flown them all up here to speak about this instead of me, but I don't have any money, so I filmed some of them. Here's their stories.
My name is Nicholas Taylor.
I don't know why Nick went black.
I am a president and founder of an organization for Navajo college students called the Natani Community Development.
My name is EJ Minigoats. I'm from the Navajo Nation, born and raised. I am an organizer for the Navajo Women's Energy Project.
Hi, my name is Edward Kalneptua. I'm the founder of Terraform Development. I was born and raised in Tuba City, Arizona, which is on the Navajo Reservation. I've been a resident of Tuba all my life, and I went to school at Arizona State and came back home to try to promote development, economic development on the reservation.
So with my colleagues, we're working on this event next spring out on Navajo. It's called Change Labs, and the premise is really simple. We want to get our Native youth and our aspiring entrepreneurs in front of mentors, in front of people who are doers, in front of people who are makers, role models. And some of the needs that we have on the reservation for our entrepreneurs are so simple. I mean, we still need things like Microsoft Office or thumb drives or just tutorials for people on how they can build a simple and free website. But mostly what we need is we just need people to cheer them on. We need for them to feel like it's safe and it's okay to do something or to try something. And we need people from the Bay Area here to help out with that. But mostly, one thing that I hope you take away from today's talk is that they need to persevere, especially through all the bureaucratic nonsense that happens on our reservations. So if you have anything to offer our Navajo entrepreneurs, I would love to speak with you today. Thanks for having me.